Well, I went to a conference last week, and one of the topics was on mushrooms that attack trees. They're called saprophytic mushrooms, and it was very interesting. Now, a lot of people will find this really boring, and interestingly, there was a fungus fair in Santa Cruz that came up this last weekend, so I attended that as well. As a lot of you know, I'm a mushroom hunter, and I like to gather up mushrooms, both edible mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms. Now, this was kind of a rare opportunity because we've recently had a lot of rains, so there is an abundance of mushrooms that are popping up. So there were a lot of examples in this fungus fair. Many of the examples, as you can see here, are grown species that you can buy these. You can buy them in kits and grow your own medicinal mushrooms or edible mushrooms. And unless you're really paying attention, you don't know what you're looking for out in the woods or on the trees. So a big part of the topic that I'm bringing up now, maybe some of you are going to be bored with this and you won't find this very interesting. But if you work in trees, you should really be very aware of a lot of these mushrooms because many of them are good indicators of a bigger problem. Sometimes you'll have a bloom of mushrooms that pop out at a certain time of year, and that will give you a good idea as to internal problems that are going on in the tree. It's important to recognize the mushrooms that are toxic, as well as learning which mushrooms are edible. Whether you want to eat them or not, it's a good idea to know what's going on in the yard or out in the woods. But if you're studying trees, like I am, it's very important to understand the differences between the wood decomposing mushrooms and the mushrooms that are really putting in real beneficial mycorrhizae into the soil that helps the roots to develop. Now, there's a lot of beneficial mycorrhizae in the soil that without it, the tree roots just don't develop properly. So you can't just look at mushrooms and say this is a good mushroom, this is a bad mushroom, this is a poisonous mushroom. You have to see the whole picture, everything that's going on. And as soon as you start looking closely at some of these mushrooms and paying attention, now that's key. You just got to pay attention. What time of year do they pop up? When do things happen? Because there's a lot of times, especially with some of the saprophytic mushrooms that grow on trees, that the only time of the year that you see that there's a problem is when a fruiting body develops. And a lot of them, like the latiparus, the chicken of the woods, the big bright yellow ones, when those erupt, they only are on the tree for a few weeks, maybe a month at the most, and then they dissolve, and then they turn into mush, and then they're gone. But if you don't pay attention to them when they're there, you may not know what's going on the inside of the tree. Now, a lot of the videos I put up talk about diseases and fungus and decay in different trees. But if you're not aware and you're not paying close attention to everything, then you're really missing out. This fungus fair was very interesting. There was a lot of very eclectic people here, a lot of mushroom hunters. Most of the people were really interested in identifying the edible mushrooms, but there was a lot of mycologists in here that were just into the whole variety. And if you ever get an opportunity to see something like this, it's well worth it. I mean, I learned a lot, but at the same token, I felt very comfortable identifying a lot of these mushrooms, which also was reassuring to me that I'm paying attention. Granted, there's so many different types of mushrooms, so many fungus. Look at that one, Fomitopsis. Those were kind of funny. They're not real. Fomitopsis, get it? It was a joke. Not many people got that joke. Bill did. I was there with a couple of friends, Bill Green and his wife Chris Green, and they're both mushroom collectors. They have encouraged me to start paying attention to more of the edible mushrooms, and I find a lot of joy in that. Not only the fact that you get to harvest some of your own food, but you can enjoy unique, different flavors that you wouldn't appreciate unless you're very aware and very observant. The mushrooms that I eat, I say there's probably a dozen of them that I'm very comfortable in identifying. And when I do come across something like a lion's mane mushroom or a chanterelle or even the oyster mushrooms, I find it so exciting. But it's also exciting to find mushrooms that you know are toxic. Look at that one right there. That guy is poisonous. How poisonous? Well, there's a skull and crossbones. Look at that ugly thing. I wouldn't eat that just because it's too ugly. There's a big question mark there. There's a lot of mushrooms that just don't taste good. They're edible, but they taste terrible. This is a cool one, the candy cap. That mushroom smells like maple syrup. And a lot of people use this as a flavoring ingredient. I've seen candy cap mushroom ice cream and candy cap, cookies, lots and lots of things that you can add some of these mushrooms as flavorings to different dishes that you may cook. The fair was pretty crowded. It's only open for 3 days out of the year. I went on the Saturday. I wish I had seen it first thing Friday when they opened up, because the mushrooms wouldn't have been handled as much. They would have been fresher, and I'm sure that the next day they were even more beat up, because they encourage everybody to pick them up and smell them and learn them. So it's not about don't touch these mushrooms, because they all go away in a couple of days anyway. Some of the mushrooms are medicinal. The turkey tail mushroom is a very, very powerful medicinal mushroom, and as well as the Ganoderma applanatum. They call that an artist conch mushroom. A lot of people will take one of these with a really bright white underside, and they'll scratch little designs in them. Then there's the Ganoderma lucidum, and there's another one that grows here on the West Coast, the Oregonsi. I don't know if I pronounced that right. That's one that you find on conifers, very shiny. And, there was a little bit there on lichens and moss and some of the other things that you can find out in the woods. And I didn't realize this, but there are medicinal lichens. Chaga. I've never seen chaga, but I've heard a lot about it. Apparently that's got some beneficial medicinal qualities to it. Looks terrible. I don't know how you'd use it. Maybe making a tea or something. There's one of my favorites, the Hericium, the lion's mane. There's also another one called the comb's tooth. I think that's a comb's tooth right there. They look very similar. They're both Hericiums. They taste like lobster. You cook them up with a little bit of butter. Oh, so good. And my family gets all excited when I bring home a surprise like this. Because a lot of these things, you can't just find them in the stores. You've got to discover them. Turkey tails are pretty common. They're the trees, or the mushrooms that grow on usually rotting oak wood that falls on the ground. Well, anyway, there was so much to see, so much beautiful stuff here. I'll just let you watch the rest of this video. It's kind of long and drawn out, and unless you're into mushrooms, you probably find this kind of slow. But I really encourage you to start paying attention and learn just a few of the mushrooms. And when you discover them, especially the ones that grow on the trees, then you learn a lot about what's happening to the tree. You learn about the diseases or the decay that is associated with that particular conch, or that basidiocarp. That's another term for a conch that grows on a tree. Those are puffballs. They're not very pretty at that point. There's a deadly one. Another deadly skull and crossbones. And a lot of these told you what type of habitat, what type of trees. Those grow around Douglas fir. Some of the mushrooms grow around oak trees. Chanterelles are an interesting one. I find chanterelles underneath the duff of live oak trees. And they're super hard to find because usually there's 3 or 4 inches of leaf mass, and the mushrooms grow under that. So you're looking at a level area of leaves, and there'll be like a little bump. And if you go dig away the top of the leaves, you'll find these beautiful bright yellow chanterelles, and where you find one, you usually find a whole bunch of them. I've got a spot in Los Gatos that my son and I have gone to, and and we've gathered up as much as 20 pounds in the chanterelles. That's pretty. The drawing there is on the bottom of that conch. Somebody scratched into it. That's what they call reishi, and there's reishi. There's two different varieties of Ganoderma that are called reishi. Hen of the Woods, I've never found that one. Miyaki, I think it is. Mitaki. That's supposed to be a really good one. Never found it. So many of these that I'm on the lookout for. Those are shiitakes. I've never found wild shiitakes. I've grown them. You can buy kits for a lot of these things. And a little bit further on here, I believe that there was, let's see if I show that. I think I do, some of the kits that are available. You can order them online. There's a lot of companies that sell them. There's one way up north called Fungi Perfecti. That's Paul Stamets' company. And that's well worth it. There was a lot of food that was made with the mushrooms, and they had a big area where they had forums and speakers on different subjects. There was a huge line for people who wanted to see the psychedelic mushrooms and psychoactive mushrooms. I couldn't get into any of them. The lines were just far too long, and I didn't want to wait for it. Here they're selling mushrooms for food, and the price of some of these mushrooms was unbelievable. I mean, some of the least expensive I saw was $15 a pound, all the way up to almost $40 a pound, depending upon what type of mushroom they were. The lion's mane, $15 a pound. I should have bought that one. That would have been good. Those are hard to find. Shiitakes, king trumpet. I think those are Strapharias there. I've grown those. Those are delicious mushrooms. They're fairly easy to grow as well. They grow in wood chips. Some mushrooms will grow in a lot of different mediums, and other mushrooms grow just in wood. Like the shiitakes, you have to drill holes in a log. You get like a fresh oak log, and you drill holes, and then they sell these little wooden plugs that you can pound into the holes, and you put a little bit of hot wax over them to keep other fungi from invading them, and then put it aside. In about a year, you can dunk the log in water, and you'll get shiitake mushrooms come up. This is an Amanita muscara. There's a photograph I took. I found this in one of my clients' yards, and it's one of the most beautiful mushrooms that I've ever seen. Apparently, that one was edible, but you've got to prepare it right. You've got to boil the heck out of it and keep draining the water out. I've never tried it. And there was a lot of kids here, which was really refreshing. So I hope you enjoyed this little tour of mushrooms, and I hope you get into paying attention.